A quick video for some of the newbies and maybe some of the folks that have been around, just on the process that I use with CE, in the hopes this helps people out. And if it doesn't, sorry. If you lose money, don't blame me. Just sharing what I do with CE. So essentially, we're on today's slate. Actually, you have to select the slate. So first things first, I'll select DraftKings and classic slate, and I want to play the 7 o'clock slate. You'll be taken to the projection screen. One of the first things you want to do is you want to load in all the projections. So if you're using CE projections, all you have to do is hit the CE projection button. Super easy. Hit that. You'll get all the projections loaded in. A couple of things I like to do is I like to look at the state of the slate. Let's say I've done no outside research, which I usually don't do. I can hit the ownership rank here to just get a feel for which teams are the highest ownership for that day. So it looks like Atlanta, Texas are the two highest ownership teams. I'll hit fantasy points as well. Looks like Atlanta has the highest fantasy points as well as the ownership. Tampa is coming in pretty hot here with second highest fantasy points. Going back to ownership, looks like Tampa is the 8th highest ownership team. So looks like there's some edge with Tampa again, right? So Tampa's our favorite team. C loves Tampa. Lopez knows this too. So it's a quick check I like to do. First thing, one of the first things I like to do. The other thing I like to do is just kind of look at the correlations for teams. At this point, I have an idea of what teams are highly correlated, but you can see Tampa is going to be super highly correlated. Lots of green right there. So looking at that, I know I'll get a bunch of Tampa. They are the second highest projected fantasy points team, 8th highest in ownership, very correlated, probably an edge to play them, right? But I don't know how many games this correlation is based on. I think it might be last 100 games. Sean would know, but this is constantly updated on a daily basis. You can mess around with these correlations if you want. Like, if you don't want a lot of Tampa, I mean, you can lower the projections or you can lower the correlations between players. I don't ever mess with it. I just trust it, let it run. And if you were sharp, if you know things that others don't, hey, mess around with it if you want. The other thing I like to do, which is pretty important, is play percentage, right? So you'll notice a bunch of players, a bunch of teams have less than 100% play percentage. And that's because players in those teams are in games that have weather risk associated with it. So Seattle and New York have a 13% rain chance, and players from that game will have less than 100%. So Aaron Judge here, 96%. You can look over any other New York players will probably be the same, and Seattle players will be the same. So if I think that game's going to play, which probably is, I haven't checked the weather, I will go ahead and manually update the play percentage to 100% for all of those players. I think it's a cool thing to do just because I want to make sure they're appearing in 100% of simulations. Essentially, if you don't change the play percentage and you think the game's going to play, then Aaron Judge and Volpe and other New York and Seattle players will not be in 4% of the simulations, which means you'll likely get less of them than you might want to. So I update that. The way I do that is, well, you can manually update them by going in and saying 100%, or again, you got to hit update play percentage, not CE play percentage. Or what you can do is you download, which is the easier thing to do, download CE projections with this button. It'll open up the CSV in Excel or numbers, whatever you're using, update to 100% quickly, and then re-upload that as a CSV, and you should be good to go. So good thing to do in my opinion, just want to make sure I cover that. It could be good for pitchers, right, in the sense that there might be some delay risk, and you want to keep the play percentage associated with Brian Wu, for example, at 96%, because there might be a delay risk, and that way the simulation engine just won't include Brian Wu in 4% of the simulations. So other than that, on this page, you can destroy all the projections. Let's say you made some you had some issues, and you want to just start from scratch. Hit destroy, re-impute, and you're good to go. Blank slate. Or if there were some errors with the projections for whatever reason, you were getting somebody that might be out, and the projections have been updated. It's a good practice just to destroy and re-upload projections. The to cloud and from cloud, I use it sometimes if I am using two computers on the day, which is often. I will, if I'm making some adjustments for projections and I don't want to have to start from fresh on the other computer, I'll hit to cloud, and then when I go to the other computer, I'll hit from cloud, and it'll bring in the data as I had it. So that's a cool thing to do, and it works really well. So we're good on the screen. I'll go to solver, and you'll see on the right I have all my cutting functions set up for the types of contests I play. Build settings, what I like to do is what you see on the screen. Sometimes I change things. Always keep it at 10,000 lineups. Salary range, sometimes I'll go as low as 48K. Batting teams per lineup, usually 2 to 4. Sometimes I go 2 to 5. I might stretch it out all the way sometimes as well. It just depends on what you want to do. I don't touch anything else except minimum pitcher points, so I have it at 7.2 for whatever reason. The reason for that is really I don't want pitchers under 7.2, so if there's like 4 or 5 pitchers on the day that have low projections and I don't want to play them, I'll set that number to what I'm comfortable with. If there's just one pitcher, I can always remove that pitcher from the equation instead of using this. But this is a good way to just to make sure I'm not getting any crappy pitchers, although you're likely not going to get crappy pitchers, too many crappy pitchers when you run your build. So optimization function, this is the default optimization function. You can adjust this to your liking. Sean recommends starting at default, which kind of mimics what the field will play, but you can make adjustments. So you can maneuver this down to, hey, I don't want this much importance on simulated fantasy points. You can have your own customized optimization function, which is what I have. So I like to edit things. So anyway, I'm not going to give you mine, but let's say you don't want full focus on simulated fantasy points. You want to take into account projected fantasy points as well. So you can add projected fantasy points, and let's say you want to do 0.3 because you want to keep total fantasy points at 1. So 70% being simulated, 30% being projected fantasy points. And I think simulated fantasy points is essentially taking what the fantasy projection is for a player, taking into account standard deviation, taking into account the correlation matrices, probably some other cool stuff that Sean has under the hood, applies all that stuff, and spits out the simulated fantasy points for a particular player. Projected fantasy points, I think, is just taking straight projection that you have in the projections column and weighting that essentially. So let's say this is the function I like. I'm good with it. I'm going to build some lineups, hit the lineups button there, and yeah, I'll take like 5 seconds or so. There you go. You got a cloud forming. You can scope the entire cloud by clicking and dragging, choosing the whole cloud just to see what it looks like. You'll hit this second button, give you some information, almost 10,000 lineups, duplication percentage, player exposures of the pool, stack exposure of the pool, the teams, etc. But let's say all that looks good. You can also hit this far right button, and you'll have all the lineups generated in the pool, and you can download that if you want. If you do things outside of C, I don't have a need for that, but it's there if you need to. I also like to name my build. So let's say initial build. All right, beyond that, before I'm ready to start building or exporting lineups, I should say, I want to load in my entries files. So one way you can do that is there's a button right here on the far right, DraftKings entry upload. It'll take you to DraftKings. You'll download the entries file, and then you'll use the upload button here for entries, and go ahead and load it in. And you should have all your lineups signified by this green entries button there. So let's say this looks good. I just want to test out what my mini max lineups will look like. I've got my functions here on the right. You can hit the eyeball here for the cutting function, and it'll cut and show you the lineups that you're likely going to have entered for that contest. So a bunch of lineups right here in the middle and up part of the field, or the pool, I should say. You want to see what it looks like from an exposure standpoint. So here's my stack exposure, team exposure, a bunch of Boston, looks like some Tampa. Player exposures, you can go further into that by hitting these tables, seeing how much Strider I'm getting. Looks like 70%, some Taj Bradley, and then you can look at all the positions as well to see what it looks like. I can look at the stack exposures a little bit more too, so I can see I'm getting 55% of Boston, 31% Atlanta. Again, these were I think the chalkier teams as well, so I'm getting it. So my cutting function likely set to be fairly chalky, looks like. Anyway, the other thing you can do is if you don't like any of the exposures, let's say you're getting too much Boston, you don't want too much Boston, you can go back to projections, lower the projection for Boston players, or let's say you're getting too much Strider, you don't like that much Strider because something's off with him, you can lower their projection. You can do these things if you wanted to. Those are definitely options at your disposal. But let's say it looks good. You can just go to the entries, and you've got your cutting functions set up against each of your contests. You can hit export, and it will basically run through all of the cutting functions you have set up, and it'll export the lineups. Quick word about cutting functions. You can absolutely set up recipes to what you want, and you can backtest them. I had a test group set up that I was just doing for this video. Bunch of things you can do. So I always like to start at simulating. I like to do 50,000 times. I'll pick the contest here. Had it limited to 400 total lineups. Then I'll dedupe. One of the things I like to do sometimes is I don't use the regressing function, but let's say I want to do the final sort at projected points, right? So I want to do my 150 lineups based on projected points. So it'll run through and find the top 400 simulated ROI lineups for that contest, dedupe, and then return the top 150 of those top 150 projected point lineups of those top 400 simulated ROI lineups, if that makes sense. So something I like to do. The other thing you could do is you can base the final step on simulated fantasy points. It's a whole bunch of options there. What if you don't want to include stacks of 2 batting teams, right? So I don't want 5 3s and 4 4s. You could certainly limit them in the build settings, or you can just go here as well after the fact, and after it runs through and finds the top ROI lineups, you can say, hey, I don't want any of the batting teams that are less than 3. So you could do filter and only include greater than 2 number of batting teams. So now it'll remove any 5 3 and 4 4 stacks, right? And then you can still add another final step that sorts by, let's say, projected points. So hit 150 total lineups. That's something you can do. Other things you can do is you can let's say you can do regressing functions. Let's say of the 400 lineups, once you get those 400 lineups, you want to only include the best half of that are based on ownership and projected points. Not recommending you do that, but let's say that's what you want to do. So then you'll regress on some projected points and ownership, right? And you want to be above the regression if you want the higher ownership and a higher projected points. If you want the lower projected points and ownership combination, then you want to do below regression. Again, not recommending you guys do this. It probably is overkill because you're already using the ROI function, but it's something you can do. You can regress on other things, so those are some advanced things you can do. But my tip would be to keep things simple, play around with it, iterate slowly, back test, and then kind of formulate your strategies over time. But wanted to at least show a few options, few of the things I've played around with in the past, and maybe it spurs some ideas and maybe it helps you guys. Let's say we're good. You just go to the entries button, export out the lineups. It should deliver an exported file, and then you can import that into DraftKings and you're ready to go. That's usually my process for the day. Hopefully that's helpful, and it literally takes me 2 to 3 minutes of my time and I'm good to go. But yeah, you enter those lineups, you win $1 million. Sean gives you Rolex. What's not to like? Good luck, everyone.